Hey guys, welcome to the second part of our beginner's guide to Microsoft Excel. So this time we will be covering the different terms of Microsoft Excel. So let's start with basic definitions. So a spreadsheet refers to a computer application used for organization, analysis, and storage of data in a tabular form. And for the worksheet is a sheet of paper on which one performs work. It is a sheet of ruled paper with rows and columns in which an accountant could record information or perform calculations. So that is the difference between the spreadsheet and the worksheet. The term spreadsheet is actually referring to the application like Microsoft Excel, Google Sheets, and the other one with, I think it's called Spreadsheet in OpenOffice. So spreadsheet application refers to the application. The worksheet is the individual sheet that you can make inside a workbook. So a workbook is a single file containing several different types of related information as separate worksheets. So in layman's term, the term workbook refers to the file that you create with a spreadsheet application. So it is referred to as a workbook because a workbook or an Excel file can contain as many worksheets as you want. Okay, all you need is just add sheets and rename it according to the type of data that is contained in that particular worksheet. And another is for the columns. The columns, it refers to the groupings of cells vertically and horizontally. So there are headers that are placed on each columns and headers placed on each rows in order for you to identify the name or the address of a particular cell. The cell refers to the individual containers or individual components of a worksheet. So this refers to a cell. So there will be billions of cells in one worksheet. That is what you get when you multiply these values. This is the total number of rows in one sheet, and this is the total number of columns in one worksheet. So that's it. Another is the range. So what is a range? A range refers to a selection of cells. So meaning if you select one cell, we're referring to a specific cell. If you are selecting multiple cells, it doesn't matter how many cells, it refers to a range. Okay, so that is the difference between a cell and a range. Each cell is referred to a cell address. So meaning if, for example, I am referring to this particular cell, the headers will be selected. So it is B4. So in naming cells, the standard of naming cells is you name the column header first, followed by the row header. So meaning this cell is actually B4. But if you are naming multiple cells, which is actually referred to as range, for example, this one, we are referring to B5 to C8. So if you're going to refer to that range, we need to type in or key in the first cell, the address of the first cell, and then the last cell separated by a colon. So meaning the last cell is C8. So if for example we are going to name this range, so it's D5 to G13. So B5 to G13. So that is the difference between a range and a specific cell, because everything in Microsoft Excel is more on referencing, especially when you are doing formulas. Next, basically I already covered this one, the AutoFill. So AutoFill is, by definition, is a software function that automatically enters data in a web form or spreadsheet. So what is AutoFill? AutoFill is a feature, is a function in a spreadsheet application that is used to fill data, just like copy and paste. Copy and paste is static, meaning it's manual. Autofill is dynamic, meaning it's automatic. So let's say, for example, I'm going to enter data. I'm going to do numbering. So say, for example, I'm doing this manually. You cannot do this option as copy and paste. But another option is, all I need is to enter two values and then use the autofill. The autofill function is attached to the active selection of a cell or a range, which is this tiny box on the lower right portion of the selection. All you need is to hover the mouse on top of it and wait for this solid cross to appear, and then you can now click and drag in any direction that you want. So for example, that is vertical. We'll do another option, another sheet. Let's say for example I want to do this 0 1. Excel is intelligent enough to detect the interval of the numbers we have selected before we did the autofill. So it detects an interval of 1, so this is the result. If we put an interval of 2, meaning 0 2, that is the interval of it is 2, then we will have the interval of 2. So that is 2 4 6 8, etc. Okay, so that is how you work with autofill. There are a variety of ways that you can do with the autofill function. It will basically do things for you, easily for you. Now let's proceed to the basic operations. Selecting a cell, range, rows, and columns. So when selecting a cell, you just need to click one cell, specific cell. In range, you just need to select the first and then drag the cursor to the last cell. So meaning I'm clicking this one until here before I release the mouse. For the rows, when you select a row, you need to click on the header. If you need to multiple select rows, you just need to drag it to the last row before you release the mouse. Another is selecting columns. So when you select a column, is the same with selecting a row. You just need to select the header. So if selecting multiple columns is the same operation, what is the advantage of this is you will be selecting the entire column from top to bottom, from the first row to the last. And the same with the rows, you are selecting the first column to the last for this specific row. Sometimes it will be better when you resize columns. It would be better to select a range of columns to make a uniform application of column widths. And the same for resizing columns. If you want a uniform resize for rows, then you can do it by selecting multiple rows before you highlight before you do the resize, because if you do it individually, it will take time, and for sure you will not get the uniform height for the rows and uniform width for the column. I think adding and inserting cells and rows. So when you add a cell, you just need to select somewhere, meaning for example I'm going to insert a cell here. All I need is to click on the cell, go to insert, and then insert cells, or you can insert rows and insert columns. In here you can right click and then select insert, and then select what action you want to do from the options that are given in the dialog box. For example, I want the inserted cell or the current cell to go down. So all I need is to select shift cells down, and then we have a new cell replacing the current cell. Next is inserting rows and columns. So when you insert rows, you can highlight or select the entire row and then insert, select insert, then you have another row. For the column, if you want to insert multiple columns, just select the desired number of columns you want to insert and then select insert. This is the same for the row. If I need to insert 2 rows, all I need is to select rows, 2 rows, and then click insert. So also for deleting, you can highlight the set of rows you want to delete and then select delete. The same with the column. For modifying worksheet, adding and modifying worksheets, all you need is to click this plus sign or right click on a sheet and then select insert or delete. You can also rename it. If you want to transfer sheet to another file, you can select move or copy. If you want to protect the sheet with a password so nobody can just edit the content of that particular sheet, you can protect the sheet and enter a password. You can also add color to the sheet, which I have discussed in the previous video. You can also hide the sheet if you don't want it visible. So next is the switching views. So for the views, you can select multiple views under the status bar, or you can go to view tab and then select the different views that you want. So for example, on the page break preview, the page layout preview, this is what you see and what you get option, meaning this is what will you get on the first page, on the second, third, and so on. So for the page break is this is how you get control over what or the range of cells you want to fit on page 1, page 2, and so on. So that's the difference between it. So I'll go back to normal view. So freezing panes. So freezing panes is one of the underappreciated feature of Microsoft Excel. Let's say for example I have a wide range of data. Say for example in this one, there are parts of this worksheet that is not visible on the screen. So if I want to scroll the worksheet horizontally to view the other parts of it that is not currently visible, I will end up losing the reference of this row, and the same with scrolling down, I will lose the reference of these columns. So meaning I will not be seeing the heading of this particular column. So in order for us to do that, we can use this option, freeze panes. So all I need is to create a boundary between the headers and the titles. Let's say for example those are the terms. So we'll have the headers and the titles. So I want the titles to remain when I scroll to the right, and I want the headers to remain, or the headings to remain, when I scroll down. So this will be our boundary line, this one and this one. So I'm going to select this cell as the boundary and then select freeze pane. So meaning when I scroll down, this part of the sheet will remain, and then when I scroll to the right, this part of the sheet will remain. And that is how you use freeze pane. It is very important to know where to define the boundary, because if you don't know where to set the boundary, then you will not get the same result. So for example, I am selecting this one, then I can have a view of the heading all the time, but when I scroll to the right, I will not be seeing the title of the row or the reference of the row. So I have to define the boundaries correctly in order for me to get what I want for this particular purpose. So that is how you work with freeze pane. Next, for the data type, Microsoft Excel is used primarily for numbers, but numbers are nothing without labels. So in Microsoft Excel, you can input alphanumeric or text, meaning it's combination of alphabets, numbers, and symbols. You can also input numbers, which is basically the primary purpose of this application, and formulas and functions. So formulas refers to the process that you want to do with the numbers, and there are some formulas that are standard or basic formulas. So for example, if I'm going to get the sum of these numbers, if you are going to insert a formula in Excel, you have to start with an equal sign. That way you are telling Excel that I am entering a formula. So equal 5 plus 15 plus 25 plus 45. So this is what we call in Excel a good formula, because we are using the reference of the cells to make a formula. So this is the good formula, and this is an example of a bad formula. 5 plus 15 plus 25 plus 45. In this type of formula, this is a static formula, which is a very bad formula, because you are using the actual values of the addends, and you will not be getting the exact same result when you change the values of the given values. So if I'm going to change one of these values, I will now get the wrong result because this formula is not referenced to the given values. So let's proceed to comparison of formulas. I'll show you the different forms of formulas, the good, the bad, and the best formula. So in this table, I have here a list of artists with their talent fee, and this is taxable, so we need the amount to deduct for this salary for us to get the net income of each artist. In this example, for the bad formula, some of Excel users are doing this by typing the actual value multiplied by the percentage. So we'll have 50,000 times 0.12, that is for 12%, and I will get 6,000. So in this example, we have to recreate the formula as many times as the given data. So it is time consuming. At the same time, it is not dynamic, so meaning it will not update the moment you change the values of the data. So 80,000 times 0.12. So this process is very tedious, and you are not maximizing the use of automation by using a computer. So in this case, I have 5 artists. So what if I have to compute 100 artists or 1,000 artists? So imagine how long will this take to finish if I am using this form of computation. So we'll have to change the formatting. This is the bad formula. So what is the disadvantage of a bad formula? The moment you change the artist contract talent fee, the tax computation will be incorrect. So another example is, this is a good formula. A good formula is by referencing this value and then multiply it by 12%. This time you can copy the formula to the rest of the artists and you will get the correct result. So the moment you change the value, say for example, Pitt raise his fee to 100,000, then you will have the correct tax compared to the bad formula. What if the tax is raised to 15%? Then you will not get the correct tax computation for this formula. So the best example of a formula is by using cell reference, meaning by using pure cell reference, meaning I'm going to use the reference of this fee, talent fee, and multiplied by the reference of the tax percentage. That way, when I change the value back to 50,000, or I change back to 12% tax, I will get the correct result every time I change values from the talent fee or the tax percentage. So with this formula, you can copy it and then paste, but we have a problem with this formula now because as you can see, the formula is referred to B5 times B2, which is actually needs to be B1. Okay? So the same with this, we have a problem with this formula because it changed to 50,000. We need to fix our reference to the tax percentage. So how do we fix this problem? So in cell referencing, in Microsoft Excel, we have what we call relative, absolute, and make referencing. So what is relative, what is absolute, and make? So relative is the normal form of referencing. So example, that is B1. For absolute referencing, you need to add the $sign before the header reference, meaning $sign B, $1. That is absolute reference, meaning when we drag or copy the formula, this reference will always be B1, meaning it will not change. It will bypass the relative nature of referencing. So meaning if I put $sign before B and $sign before 1 and enter, I can now copy the formula and the reference will still be B1. So if we're going to check the formula, the first formula is B4 times B1. The next formula is B5 times B1, B6 times B1, B7 times B1, B8 times B1. So meaning the first part of the formula is relative, meaning when I copy the formula down, what changed when I drag the formula down is the row. So it is relative to the row, the current row of the cell that I copied the formula to, but I set this formula to absolute, so meaning I bypassed the relative nature of the cell referencing, so it stayed at B1. It did not change to B2, B3, B4, and so on. And that is how you use, or when you use, the absolute referencing. So how about the mixed referencing? The mixed referencing is setting one header as absolute and setting the second header to relative. For example, $B relative 1, meaning I'm setting the B column to absolute and I'm setting the row column to relative, meaning when I drag it, so again I'll change this to mix and I'll copy. So what happened is I set the row header or the row reference of the cell to relative, so when I drag it down, it changed to 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is inappropriate for this situation. So another form of mix is by setting B relative and setting 1 as absolute. So in this case, B is relative, B is relative, 1 is absolute. So when I drag the formula down, I get the correct result. Working with cell referencing the first time can be a little bit tricky. So if there are parts of the discussion that you did not get, you can just rewind the video to watch it. It would be best for you to learn easily if you put it to action instead of just watching the video. So you can watch the video and follow through by doing it actually with the application, so you will get what it really meant with cell referencing. So another important thing you need to know about formulating a formula is by recalling the basic mathematical rules, which is we call the MDAS, the multiplication, division, and addition, subtraction. It's all about prioritizing the mathematical operators, or understanding how basic mathematical operations work, because that is what is imposed in computing. So I'm giving you an example of basically getting the average manually. So say for example, number 1, number 2, value number 1, value number 2, value number 3, and value number 5. And then in this column we will get the average of these values. Okay, so let me resize this columns. So let's say for example I'll have this random values, say for example between 50 and 100. Okay, so I have here a variety of values, and then I'll copy it because it was a formula. So I'll copy these values and then paste it as values to make it value. So again, if I undo this operation, as you can see, it is in a formula. It is generated using a formula. So I will be copying this value and paste the actual value of the formula. So basically MDAS is the basic rules in mathematics where multiplication and division is more prioritized than addition and subtraction. If you mix the same priority like multiplication and division, it will be interpreted from left to right. But if you mix addition and multiplication, multiplication will be computed first before addition, or division and addition. Division will be prioritized than addition. So for example, 5 plus 5 divided by 2. So if we interpret this from left to right, the result will be 5. So 5 plus 5 equals 10 divided by 2 equals 5. But computers follow a certain rule. So the computer will compute this area first and then add it to this value. So meaning this will be 2.5 plus 5, that is 7.5 if I am correct, right? So if you want to bypass this formula by performing the addition first before being divided to 2, then you have to bypass the rules by using brackets. So brackets or parentheses. So this way we are telling Microsoft Excel to add 5 by 5, then divide it by 2. This way we'll get the result that we are trying to get. Okay, by the way, BM dash stands for B is for bracket, E is for exponent, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So the first two have higher priorities than the second two, and this second two has higher priorities than the last two. So basically these have the same priority, so it will be interpreted. If both are present, it will be interpreted from left to right. This one, if both are present, it will be interpreted from left to right. However, if there is a bracket, the ones that are inside the bracket will be interpreted first, and also the ones that have exponents will be interpreted first. So that's how computer works. So this time I'm going to get the average of the following. So what you need to avoid is doing this: 90 plus 92 plus 85 plus 56 divided by the number of given, which is 5. So you have to double check your formula to manually calculate if your manual calculation and your result is the same. If not, then you have a problem with your formula. So basically this formula is incorrect. So to make it correct, we need to add brackets to fix the issue. So that is the average for this. By the way, I'm using drag and drop function using the AutoFill. So I am using the AutoFill feature of Microsoft Excel to copy the formula that I created, or I can just copy and then highlight and then paste, but it's the longer method. The fastest one is by using AutoFill, and AutoFill is intelligent enough to detect that the data that are surrounding the formula or the AutoFill, when I drag it down, I can do it, or when I double click the AutoFill, it will automatically detect the data, the corresponding data on the left. So the AutoFill stops at the last row of the data. So that is one of the most important factor you have to remember when developing a formula. Also, you can use function. This can easily be replaced by a function. So to get the sum of these values, we can use the sum function. So Excel is suggesting, based on the keywords that we have entered, suggesting the related functions available in Excel. So all I need is to select by double clicking or pressing the tab to commit the selection, or select and then press tab and then select or highlight the range and then close the parentheses. Now we have the sum. All we need to do is divide it by 5 and we get the same result. So that is how you use a function. It's basically being familiarized with the function. If you're still not familiar with the function, you can use the insert function button and then just click on the function that you want to use. Then it will be asking you what sort of data that you want to get the sum with. In this example, Excel already suggested that I'm trying to get the sum of A4 to F4, which is incorrect. I will try to fix that by highlighting the actual data and then click OK. Then I will have the sum of 403 and then divided by 5. So the same result. You can also use average function for this matter. You can automatically get the average, but the purpose of this formula is to emphasize this rule. Okay, so for the cell and range naming, let's go back to the previous example. In here we discussed the different forms of cell referencing. Another option for absolute referencing is cell naming. So say for example this is B1. If I change this name to a more appropriate name, let's say for example tax, then I can use, let me create another column. Okay, let me hide this for now. So in this formula, we multiply the talent fee by the tax. So instead of using the reference B1, I can use the tax cell name, which I renamed earlier for this particular cell, and then press enter. Then I get the same result. But this cell naming option is similar to absolute formula. So if the formula needs to be mixed, you don't need to use cell namings. because it's attributed to absolute reference. Okay, so for the range naming, say for example, let's delete this one. I need to get the total of talent fee, and I have a huge list of talent fee, so I will be using the range many times. So instead of highlighting this every time I create a formula, I can make a name for this range. Say for example, this range, I'll name it as talent fee. One thing to remember about naming cells or range is that you cannot use space for the name. So as you can see, I'm not using space. You can use underscore to replace the space, but in this case I will be using no space, name, enter. So this time, every time I select this, it changed to talent fee. So I don't need to remember B4 to B8 range, or B4 to B808 or something. So all I need to do is, for example, I need to get the grand total of talent fee. So all I need is to get the sum of talent fee. Enter. So now I have the sum of all talent fees using the range name that I have defined earlier. In this case, I multiplied the talent fee by the tax percentage using the cell name, the new cell name. Okay, so for test and validation, in order for you to be sure of your formula, especially if you are not yet experienced with making formula, you need to validate the correctness of your formula. You need to manually or have another form of computation and compare it to the result of your formula, because if not, you might be giving the incorrect result to whoever needs the data.